Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock. If you would all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. I do appreciate that. Okay, first on the agenda is roll call. Jamie, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Queenie Mars.
Here.
Mayor President Cindy Simpson.
Here.
Trustee Ed Hollow.
Here.
Trustee Richard Tucker.
Here.
Trustee Nick Manning.
Here.
Trustee Denise Brown.
Here.
Okay, so we have a quorum, so we will continue on. Next is the approval of the agenda, and I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented by staff.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion by Trustee Denise Bryant and a second by Richard Toker to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sound. Okay, motion carries. Next is the approval of the minutes of the January 11th, 2023 as presented. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for January 11th, 2023 as presented by staff. I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Trustee Richard Tucker and a second by Trustee Nick Manning to approve the minutes of January 11th, 2023 as presented by staff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sound. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is our Region 9 Economic Development presentation, and we will turn it over.
Hi. Hi. Thank you, trustees and Heather. Thanks, Jason, for helping with technology. My name is Heather Otter, and I work for the Region 9 Economic Development District here in Southwest Colorado. So we're your planning district, and we help to support the 5 counties here in Southwest Colorado and the 2 Native American tribes, Ute Mountain Ute and Southern Ute. And so often at the beginning of each year, we'll offer to come and do sort of a economic development fundamentals, which really just means looking at how we think about economic development in Region 9, and looking at some of the programs and services that we provide so that you're all aware of it, give you some local data to food for thought, I call it, and then just look at some ways that we're collaborating when it comes to economic and community development. Tonight, I'd also like to take just a few minutes to talk about the Community Development Action Plan, or CDAP for short. Lots of acronyms in my business. CDAP, and they're updated every 2 years. So when I get to the CDAP part, I'll talk a little bit about my hopes for working with this group and other stakeholders in the community to prioritize the projects that are on that list. I always like to, put the ones that are completed on the yay, we're done list, and then talk about what the community here is hoping for when it comes to those projects and how that all fits into the economic development picture. So if I haven't met you before, I haven't worked with you before, my background is rooted in education, being a small business owner, and several other pursuits, which prepared me well for economic development. Had you asked me 6 or 7 years ago about working in economic development, I would have said, well, what do you do when you do that? But as it turns out, being a small business owner, having been a public school teacher, and then also working in industry, oil and gas industry as a trainer of employees, that really prepared me well, and it combines a lot of my favorite things.
Heather, I am going to interrupt you. You are presenting to the board and the staff, not the audience. We're happy the audience is here, but your presentation is to the staff and the board. So.
Thank you for that.
Makes it easier than having to keep your head on a swivel.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. Yes, thank you. Okay, go ahead and advance to the next Slide. All right, so when we think about economic development, I like to use this pyramid because I'm a visual learner, and so this picture helps me a lot. And when you think about economic development, the bottom of that pyramid really as the foundation helps to visualize things that really need to be in place, or the keystone to allow those things that are further up the pyramid to occur. So one of the things that we talk a lot about in economic development is business growth or business retention or recruiting businesses to our area. We talk a lot about diversifying business. But in economic development, a lot of these things at the bottom part of that pyramid have to be in place before we can actually recruit new businesses to our area. Sometimes even before we can help our existing businesses expand or grow. So leadership development, local leadership like yourselves, community placemaking, which I'll get into a little further down the road, workforce development, infrastructure, broadband, housing, utilities, those kinds of things. And then something near and dear to my heart, which is youth engagement. Next slide. So in essence, economic development just being programs, policies, and activities that influence economic change in our area, make it a great place to live, work, and play. So as an economic development planning region, or in my organization, we delve a lot into the program part of this. You all, as a local government, delve into the policy piece for economic development, and then we both partner on the activity piece when it comes to economic development. Next slide. So some of the things that we both work on together, listed here. I mentioned business retention, but we play a big part in strategic planning, both for the region and then helping the local communities as an economic development planning district. So these are just things that, again, the activities that we both work on together. Next slide. So again, quality of life is a big part of economic development. And when we talk about helping to grow our communities and do that in a smart way and make it a great place to live, work, and play, we talk about quality of life. And really that is dependent upon the community's wealth and the community's health. And I added that. You know, we used to talk about community wealth, but I've added health because really when at the end of the day, if things like jobs, which I'm really concerned with, job creation, job retention, that plays a big part in the overall health of your community, whether it's mental, physical, emotional health, having jobs. So this COVID pandemic really opened our eyes to making sure that we're talking about health as a part of our wealth in the communities. So community wealth is created primarily through job growth. And you know, job creation, job growth, there are a couple types of jobs that we talk about in economic development. Next slide, please. So there's direct jobs, or primary jobs, and then secondary jobs, or indirect. So if you think about the primary jobs, those businesses are the ones that are exporting goods and services outside of our area that bring the dollars in from the outside. The secondary, or the indirect jobs, mainly serve our local markets. So that's the money that circulates around, like in the town of Mancos or in our communities in our region. Next slide. So again, visual learner I am, so here's a graphic that just helps me think about that. That green arrow coming down, if you think about town of Mancos, or you can think of Montana County, or you can think of Region 9 in that yellow circle. The stuff coming in would be from those, you know, direct-based industries, and that would be tourism. It's the export of goods and services, like I mentioned. Dividends, interest, and rent, so things that are happening with, say, retirees. Maybe they're getting transfer payments. It could be from, you know, Medicare, that kind of thing. That creates money coming in. And then money going out is if we're, you know, we're importing things in that we're paying for when we pay our taxes, and then sometimes leakage. So a quick note about leakage. Sometimes when let's take Silverton, for example, or Mancos may be a good example too. Sometimes people have to leave our smaller communities to go get their goods and services. So while larger areas may talk about leakage, or you might hear about, well, what's the leakage? What's the retail leakage in your community? sometimes the smaller communities have to talk about that a little bit differently because we are in a situation where we have to leave our communities to get certain goods or services. So let's talk a little bit about, next slide please. When we talk about those services that are inside, or that local money that goes around inside our communities, we talk about direct base, which is bringing money in. Just wanted to give you an example of the direct base. About 62% of that money in Region 9 is coming from direct base. So if you look at that pie. About 30% is the local residential services. So if you just think about the money coming in, going out, we've got, and then indirect base is a much smaller percentage. So really what I want you to take from this slide, and there's lots more data that is available through Region 9, so if this piques your interest, my contact information will be at the end, and I'd be happy to dig into this with you because I love data. But what I want you to take from this slide is to note that if you look at those little green, I've broken this down by county, and I wanted to show you a couple things. If you look at our direct base, the number of jobs in our direct base industries is what this chart up here is showing you. And the percentage in the direct base industries. Our direct base industries are in the column on the left, so agribusiness, mining, manufacturing, government, tourism, and households. So let's pay attention to tourism and households. We all know that we're a tourism-based economy here, largely. The numbers support that. And then households. So one of the things about households is there are a large number of jobs or money that is generated from households. Households are things like with retirees when they have transfer payments. So that income that I'm talking about that's coming in because of money they earned prior, or it could be dividends from investments, those kinds of things. So there's a lot happening across our region, but including Montezuma County, with regard to households. And this has to do with the fact that we are an aging community. Okay? So just some numbers behind that to show, and then there's just the difference between 2020 and 2021 there. Next slide. So when we think about jobs and we think about the types of industries that create our jobs here and maybe what we want to protect, we talk a lot about livable wage. So this is a report that we put out, and I've just taken a snapshot here to show you Cortez and Mancos. We do a lot of work to localize this data. So if you are ever looking at, say, housing costs, and you're looking at national numbers or the national data warehouses that produce those numbers, know that those will be off from what it really costs to live here. So our livable wage is localized quite a bit, especially in the realm of housing costs, and especially in the realm of childcare costs. Okay? So what this tells you here is that when we talk about livable wage, one of the things that's important is that livable wage is self-sufficiency. Livable wage means no subsidies for the family. This is, we can, we're paying our own way for what our needs are. But this is not living high on the hog. This is what does it take to get by in our communities. Okay? So we've broken this down and looking at if you're one adult and say you're renting or living in a one-bedroom place. If it's a two-bedroom place, we're assuming an adult with a preschooler age child would probably have a two-bedroom place. Again, these are assumptions. And then a family, so two adults with a preschooler and a school-age person. We've broken down and localized what it costs for these larger categories. Okay, so we can also show you that at the minimum, that household is going to have to make $72,000 to reside in Cortez or Mancos and be self-sufficient. So I link the direct base and I talk about jobs when I talk about livable wage because it's one of the big conversations right now around can we be self-sufficient here and can a person afford to live here? The big elephant in the room is housing. So houses are where these jobs go to bed at night. And if we can't have a place, if we can't afford a place to live, we're gonna have to go find a job somewhere else. And if we have to go find a job somewhere else, that impacts a lot of things. So let's take our school teachers, for example. If you have school-age children, you might know that your child's math teacher is probably also a coach of some kind, or runs FFA, or whatever it may be. Now, if that teacher all of a sudden has to live in Aztec to afford housing, those community-based things that that person is able to provide to the fabric of the community go away. So again, just food for thought and ways for us to think about how this data relates to our communities. Next slide. So it puts some pressure on us as local government, as an economic planning district, as community to think about being resilient. And there's a lot of talk about resiliency now because of our last couple years. So thinking about business, place-based, and people strategies to kind of get that nice combination of a resilient and a healthy community. Keep us, it's not just a virus necessarily, it could be man-made or natural disruptions to the economic stability of the area. Next slide. All right, so when we talk about those strategies, people and business and place-based strategies, what works for rural? There's been a lot of work done around what can work for rural, and there's some evidence-based strategies. And these 5 here seem to work really well for communities that look and feel like us. Place-based, asset-based, economic gardening, entrepreneur networks, and using a regional approach. So let's talk about those in just a little bit more detail. Next slide. When we think about place-based strategies in planning and development, it's obviously building the communities that people want to live in, but it's more than that. Going back to my last couple of comments, it's also building communities, not that they just want to live in. I don't think we have a problem with that. A lot of people want to come here, as was evidenced over the last couple of years when people had to work remotely or were looking for a way to get out into the wilderness. However, they have to be able to live here, so we have to be intentional about this. Community surveying is very important, and it can work because a lot of times we tend to generalize one thing to an entire area. And through community surveying, we can actually get better information about my world as an economic developer, your world as a resident in the community, or your world, local government, their world as a resident or a worker. So community surveying, important. Next slide. Asset-based, what makes your community unique? This can be all those things up there. There can be, it's about the individuals here. It can be the natural, it can be the built community that make us unique. It could be something political or financial. It's not always about money, but it has to be intentional. It has to be intentional. Next slide. This is not unique. There's rivers and riversides, and there's mountains and kayaking, and all the great stuff about some of our wonderful assets here. But it doesn't make it unique. Intentional around how people are around or utilize these is unique. So there are, for example, Salida is a good example of having a very intentional planning and development around how they use their riverfront property. And it looks very different than, say, here or like Durango or even in the town of Dolores. There's intention around how they're building that plan. Another thing is that there's some intention now throughout our region around sustainable tourism and how people are interacting with our unique assets here, whether it's Mesa Verde, Canyon of the Ancients, the river, or something else. So you can see it it's starting to show up in our marketing for our tourism, sustainable tourism. We're trying to educate people more when they come here, helping them enjoy our community while they help us take care of of our community so they can come back to it 20 years from now. And it'll still be a great place to visit. So that's intentional, and that's a good rural strategy. Next slide. Economic gardening. This just means growing your own. And we have a lot of small business here. And in fact, most of our local jobs are through our small businesses. And all the big businesses used to be a small business. So the point in this is that whether it's growth, expansion, or just maintenance, because it's a great small business, maybe they don't want to grow so much, but they want to sustain and be here. This economic gardening concept for smaller communities is vital and has been shown to work, evidence-based. And just to give you an idea, in the United States as a whole, almost 98% of all U.S. businesses are small businesses. Now, a small business by the U.S. Business Administration is categorized as 500 employees, equal to or less than. So what do we have here? A micro.
I know.
Yeah. So anybody want to guess in this region how many employees our businesses have equal to or less than on average?
12.
Yeah, it's right around 15 on average for the region. So again, even more important, one job in our community is, equivalent economically to lots of jobs, like on the Front Range. So it makes a much bigger impact here, a much bigger ripple in the water. Another just interesting fact is that new businesses were popping up exponentially during the pandemic. New business applications were up across the U.S., and that was mirrored here in Southwest Colorado. Like 1.4 million new business applications by September of 2021, compared to 400,000 new business applications across the U.S. as of that same time in 2019. So people were reevaluating. So there was a lot of opportunity, and people were looking for support for small businesses. So business support is also really important. Next slide. Sorry, I didn't advance mine. All right, so when we talk about small business, one of the things that I want to point out, and I'm going to talk about entrepreneurship here in a moment, but something's in the water in Southwest Colorado, and I think that the momentum is important for us as economic planners and local government. And that is that there's a lot of business development and entrepreneurship going on. There's a company or an organization called Colorado Companies to Watch, and they basically look at second stage companies. So it's companies that have gotten to a certain point of revenue, they have a certain number of employees, thinking about, they've made the leap from the idea on the napkin and a business model, business canvas model to actually, running their business. And per capita, Southwest Colorado has recognized more Colorado Companies to Watch winners than the state. So down here, and so I just listed, some of the companies that have been recognized. But these are your job creators. These are the engines here in Southwest Colorado that are putting people to work and creating that direct base that I talked about, where bringing that money in to our region. So it's important that we create an environment that these folks can continue to do what they're doing. Next slide. So point here is just that economic growth is going to require it's just continued expansion of entrepreneurial innovation. And so we're looking at how to do that at a younger age. So really pushing into the schools. And I'll give a couple examples here momentarily. But not just the high schools, like moving down into the middle schools and even further into our elementary schools. Changing the question from what do you want to be when you grow up to what are you good at? What sparks your interest? What can you make money at? How can you serve the community? And bundle all that together so that they can have a different picture of than just what do you want to be when you grow up. Okay, next slide. A couple examples. That woman right up there in the middle is from just over the hill. Started her business, their kitchen table, in the town of Dolores. And her business was recently acquired. She did something that wouldn't have been all that interesting to a lot of people, but she figured out how to make it easier for local governments to look at incoming revenue, deal with like all the tax stuff, Airbnb, and just automate everything and save people lots of time on reporting. Those two fellows on the left, their company, those are like the big ones, the ones that make a big exit. They met at a co-working space in Durango, had never met each other before, met at a co-working space doing totally different things. And their company was, a couple years ago recently acquired and, by another much, much bigger company. The two on the right are examples of EPAC is a female veteran family. She had moved around a lot because she was a military wife and began coding and now runs a business to help other women enter coding and be in the technology sector. And then there's a lot of other examples. Farm to Summit is food for outdoor, and they're using all the local food to create the food that they package so that people can enjoy the outdoors and doing really well. But one of the things most of them have in common is SCAPE, and that's our entrepreneurial network company that helps entrepreneurs from soup to nuts and even pitch for seed money. So we do have that here. Okay. How am I doing on time? Am I okay? All right. So working as a region, strategy 5. Working as a region for smaller communities or sparsely populated, relatively our entire region has about 100,000 people in it. So when you think of that, most urban centers have 3 times that many. We have that spread across, lots of miles of road and terrain. And so it's important that we work as a region when it comes to economic and community development. What I mean by that is that there are examples whereby when you can have your microphone from 4 or 5 different communities, it can make a difference when it comes to funding. Or in the case of infrastructure, one example is broadband. So the region has recently been working individually in communities to get us reliable and fast broadband. And it's been going on for a long time, as many of you know. But when we finally, to shorten the story, really got together and local governments, communities, stakeholders, all put their efforts into one place, made enough noise so that it got the state's attention, the Attorney General's attention, and we're now embarking on, at least first, a $66 million project as a result of all of our communities coming together and through Region 9 to finally connect and build out middle mile infrastructure throughout the region. And then we want last mile. Yes, we do, but we have to get our middle mile backbone infrastructure in place. And so it looks like we're going to be able to do that. Would not have been possible though if we didn't work as a region. Another example is SWORD, Southwest Opioid Response District. So we were the first area that agreed as an entire region, every local government nodded their head to say, yes, we want to do something. We know that if the town of Mancos, for example, gets their check from the opioid settlements that are in lawsuits right now from the state, what can we do to really impact and make a difference in our community to address this problem? So our whole region agrees that, substance use disorder, the opioid epidemic, is affecting the region, has its fingers in a lot of things. But by coming together, everybody pooled their money into one regional pot so that we can make an impact for the entire region. And there's, I have more information on that. If you're interested in it, I can share a webpage with you that shows you exactly where we're going with that. but couldn't have happened without coming together and working across county lines. All right, and then I think for timing, what I would like to do is, next slide, there are, I talked about resilience. We're all talking a lot about resilience after the COVID epidemic. And these particular buckets are things that, again, working as a region, there are several projects underway to help us become resilient, stay resilient in the event of any other disaster or economic disruption. And so there is a program called the Roadmaps Program, and it's in partnership with the state, but the Montezuma County communities have worked together to strategize and look at priorities for areas to work on. I mean, housing is one of them, workforce development, mental and behavioral health, but they are all falling under these large buckets here for resilience. And there is a group that has been funded that is in formation called the Montezuma Community Collective. And it's a group of stakeholders. Jason and I are part of that working group, but in order to help build community partnerships and help prepare local governments and community members to implement the work that will work with these projects. So the reason that I bring this up too is that when I talk about your community development action plan, your community development action plan is already tied to these resiliency priorities. So Region 9 understood that the state was working on resiliency priorities. So we took a step to make sure that we tied our Southwest Colorado community projects to these priorities. Why? Because if we can have a common language around how we're addressing things, it makes it much easier when we need funding for something. So if we're writing grants, if the project is on a community development action plan like yours, there can be, and it shows that it's part of a community development action plan, that's one of the first things that funders are going to look at and ask the question, do you have buy-in? And so these have been tied to those. And now we have the Roadmaps Program and the Montezuma Montezuma Community Collective that will help to build that capacity in the community to continue this work, help get those projects underway, and then have that common language around tying that together and for funding purposes.
Heather, can I hold? Terry, can you turn that down a little bit? Thank you. Yeah, now we're
Yeah.
So when we talk about your community development action plan, you will see these 6 goal areas come up again. And I think you'll find that many of these regional goal areas, because they came from the voices of all of our communities here in Montezuma County, are going to tie with things that you're already working on. So we are trying not to duplicate efforts. I don't like to put people in additional meetings or call you on the phone if the work's already been done. But these are ones that I think that you'll find familiar. All right. Next slide. Yeah, so that's the team that was put together in this community collective, and I will share this out. Some of these I added because they were hot off the press, so like this one will not be in your board packet, and I will provide that after the fact so Heather can send it out if you like. Okay, let's go ahead, and if you will, let's go to the final slide. I've talked a little bit about, let's just go to the final, you can go to the very last one that has my contact information. I talked a little bit about broadband, that sort of a thing, but Region 9 is here to support and answer any questions. A couple of the things that we can be really helpful with is data. And in this, I've put in some data resources, whether it's at the national, state, or the regional level. But when it's time to write a grant or it's time to, think about priorities, data helps tell a story, so we can be very helpful in that respect. And then if you have other questions about this, you'll probably hear from me again when it comes to the CDAP and getting those updated, because I'd like to know, I do keep up on what you have sort of gotten completed, but we want to make sure that it's not us telling you what they are or what goes on the list, but hearing from you what will be important to have there. So my contact information is there, and if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out anytime. I can text and email, or you can call.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice. Okay. Next is audience business, and I don't have anybody signed up, but I see some people came in late that may want to speak that is not on the agenda. Is there anybody that wants to speak that is not on the agenda? Okay, we'll move on. Heather, announcements.
I just have a few. Currently working on our source water protection plan. The next meeting is in February. As soon as we decide if it's virtual or in person, I'll send that to you all and see if anybody's interested in coming. If there are more than 3 of you, we'll notice a public meeting. But as soon as we figure out, we have the date, we're just trying to figure out if we're going to be here or if it's going to be virtual. As soon as I figure that out, I'll let you know. As a reminder, Elizabeth Garvin will be here on February 21st with Dave Preston. We will hold a special meeting on the DOLA planning grant that we have, affordable housing, specifically to linkage fees. The last time we talked about this, you asked for more information on that specific topic, so they'll be here to provide you with that information. That is February 21st. And I'll have to look at my calendar. I think it's at 6 p.m.
Yeah, 6 p.m.
Okay. And then we talked about a joint workshop with the Planning Commission on February 15th. Do you guys want to do that at 6? So they have their meeting at 7, or do you want to have their meeting be your joint workshop?
Do we want their meeting to be virtual?
What day again?
February 15th, the third Wednesday of the month. Their meeting starts at 7.
So we would be at their meeting.
Correct.
Oh, I see.
It's a joint board.
Yeah.
Unless
What
you
do you
prefer that we do that a different day, and I schedule like a completely outside of board planning commission meetings. I can schedule a special workshop.
Do they have much on the agenda at this point?
The comp plan, they're talking about the comp plan. There are no public hearings or citizen initiated items, it's comp plan updates.
I think the 15th, that would, yeah.
Want to do it at 6? I mean, you want us, that way they can continue with their meeting after ours? I think that'd be better.
Yeah, let them know.
So doing it in a workshop format?
Okay, so 2:15, 6 p.m. All right. And then one of our trustees had a question about short-term rentals. So I've asked Jamie to bring some current information because I did not have the current information today. My information was wrong. So I've asked Jamie to bring in current information, and then if you all have any questions after she gives it to you, if she doesn't have the answer, she'll bring it back to the next meeting.
Yesterday, Jason and I had our first training on the software. It is up and running now, so we got to look at it. We can come back definitely at a later time once we can dig into it a little bit more and tell you about it. But as of right now, we have 4 active licenses for 2023. I've denied 2. One of them was a prior license from last year, but they do not fall into our new ordinances. The other one was they wanted a new license. They have a long-term rental that they wanted to turn into short-term, but again, they didn't qualify for our new code. And then I have 2 pending right now that I haven't fully researched yet to see if they fall into it. With that new software, we discovered there are 32 short-term rentals in the town of Mancos. Active short-term rentals.
It's a few
So,
too many.
and there's also 3 short-term rentals that GovOS is still researching just to make sure that it's within our city limits and it falls within all our stuff. So Jason and I have a lot of work ahead of us. And then for the month of December, which I thought this was really neat, it also tells us all the advertisements, because that's what they go off with the different websites. And there were 159 total advertisements for the town of Mancos for short term. Now, some of them, like, it could be one person who's on multiple sites, but yeah, 159 for December. I was like, wow, that's a lot of advertisements.
So did you say again, how many licenses have we actually have out right now?
So I have 4 right now out.
Only
that
4
yes.
right now. And we decided there was up to 15.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the packets we sent out, we haven't heard back from. So I don't know if they read it all and realized some of them don't qualify or what, but Jason and I are going to be sending out some more notices here soon at the end of January.
Jimmy, for those 32 that are in town, does that include ones that are 30 days or more? That are going to be outside? Or
No, this is specifically listed as short term.
just anything?
Mm-hmm. And so the software also lets you know how many bedrooms. I mean, it goes into the detail for everything. And quite a few are 1 bedroom. So once we can dig into it more, I'm kind of wondering if they're in homes.
Like a room and a house.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Which is an easier.
Well, is that going to take into account? Because I know, like, they can make this in. They list their stuff on Airbnb. No, they're in
Yes, I pulled those. There were more listed, but I
Okay.
pulled Miss Kitty's,
Yeah.
Mavis,
Okay. So those
and
are
all of
those
those.
from the data set. Okay.
So this is 32 after that.
It's hard to imagine.
I know, I was kind of wondering that too.
So Jamie, is this a lot of time for you? Is this taking more time away from the other things that you
Just
do?
started.
It's a little time consuming for me and Jason right now, but it's because we're getting it going and implementing all these new rules, things like that. I think once it's all set up, it'll be a breeze right
Okay.
after.
Okay, good to hear. Okay, good.
I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I did make a short-term rental web landing page on the doing business site. If you guys want to check that out, links to all the codes that are associated.
Thank you.
And that's in our Mancos.
Yeah, if you go to the town of Mancos and then click on doing business, it's in there.
Does anybody on the board have anything? I have a couple. I'm hearing tremendous compliments on your crew, Terry, with the snow removal. They're doing a remarkable job. Even people from Dolores and Cortez are commenting on what a great job Mancos is doing with the snow removal. So I want to pass kudos on to your crew. And then also to the marshal's office. I got a phone call from a lady who is pretty much homebound, but she needed to get out to a doctor's appointment and couldn't, was out there trying to shovel herself. And Deputy Morris went by and saw her out there and knew she shouldn't have been out there doing that, and stopped and shoveled out her driveway for her so she could get her car out. And she happened to know me, so she called me, and I did ask her to get a hold of you, Heather. Hopefully she did, to put it in his file, because that's going above and beyond. Our staff does that for our people. So just want to pass that on, the kudos to you guys as departments. You're doing an awesome job. And then the only other announcement I have, I don't know if everybody's interested, but the Cattlemen's Association meeting will be February 11th at the Elks Club. It's an all-day meeting. They meet all day, and they have their banquet that night. I have been attending as a representative from the town, and have spoken at the last well, it's 5, and they usually give me about 5 minutes to speak. We have a lot of the same issues that they do with the mountain lions and the bears and things in town, and the wolves and the water, which is a big issue right now. So they do give me an opportunity just to coordinate with them to let them know. So if anybody else is interested, that is on the 11th of February. So, any other announcements?
What was that date? Give me.
The 11th of February.
Heather, for that Bears piece, is this an appropriate time to bring that up?
Oh, no, I'm gonna discuss with Jason and make a decision, and what I'll do is I'm gonna put an FYI in the next board packet, so that it gets published out.
Perfect.
But, Jason and I are gonna do a little bit more talking and maybe make sure that we're seeing what we need and do a little bit more research.
And Denise, this might be a time you want to mention your...
Yeah, I just want to mention that it's a disappointment that the county has decided not to plow the Chicken Creek parking lot. Yes, there's a lot of snow. I mean, they've been doing it for 40 years, and then for them to all of a sudden say, no, we're not going to plow this out, you know, whatever, for whatever reasons. I know they're short-staffed, blah, blah, blah. But they're willing to plow other places around here. So I view that as, it's so unfortunate for the town, because not only Mancos residents go up there to ski, it's people, it's like it's regional. People from Durango, Farmington, they all come here, and then they come in town and spend money. I think I'll go have breakfast at the bakery, and then I'm going to go ski. So I think it was a really poor decision on the county's part to decide not to plow that parking lot. And right now it got plowed, but it was a good Samaritan thing that, you know, the Chicken Creek board came up with some money to have someone else do it. But, you know, they've been doing it for a long time, and it's just, I think it's not fair to the town, and I think it's going to economically, it's not good for us either.
Okay, all right. So then moving right along to our committee reports, Montezuma County Commissioner is not here tonight. He's at a water conference. We did meet with the commissioners and the other mayors on Monday. And he did tell us that he wouldn't be here tonight because he's at a water, the Colorado River thing is very intense, and so he's attending that. The Montezuma County Planning Commission, I attended that last Thursday night. They had 3 things on the agenda. The first one pulled their application, so we didn't have to talk about that one. The second one was a piece of cake. It was just subdividing out one little 5 acres off of a 50-acre plot. Now it has a house on it and everything. Just subdividing it to his son. The second one was similar to the one that was down Weber Canyon, where some people wanted to have a event center with music, and it happened out on County Road G down by the dump, and people that lived down there could hear the music 5 miles away, and were not happy about it. And there was probably, I would say, 30 people there to speak against it, and so it was not recommended by the Planning Commission to go to the Board of County Commissioners. They can still appeal to them, but I know the one down our road, 41, they did not accept it, so I don't know that they'll accept this one or not without some major changes. So it's very interesting. Nothing is really affecting Mancos within our 3-mile area, but I'm sure learning a lot. And they are working on their land use code in the county, and they're also discussing the forgiveness rules that they've got right now, where people just do it and then come in and say, oh, I didn't know. And so they're talking about what they're doing, the setbacks, what they're going to charge them. They're going to charge them, 4 times the amount of the licenses and things. And they've been talking about this for about the last 6 months, and so they're about ready to discuss it wholeheartedly and presented. We had 2 new board members, so they're bringing them up to speed, and then that'll go to the Board of County Commissioners on the forgiveness acts in the county, and people just doing what they want to do and then asking for forgiveness afterwards. So, been a lot, very interesting.
I have a question for you.
Mhm.
Since you brought up the Weber Hall on 41, had several people ask me about that, approach me in the last couple of days and ask about it. Do you know what, anything going on with that was brought up to you?
It didn't get to go to the county commissioners. They said no, and I saw that the county commissioner said no. Because it sits in an area where the sound just travels.
Just at the top of the road.
And it just travels, and they didn't have the proper parking for it, and that then put extra,
Sure.
you know, out on the highway, it's a county road, you know, and extra parking out there, and then the alcohol, and people driving in that road. We've already had a couple deaths on that road from alcohol, so it didn't pass the county commissioners, so we can appeal, but I don't know that it's going to get them very far. So.
I was just curious because several people have come to me and asked, and said we don't have anything to do with that.
Yeah, no.
Not our
Yeah,
jurisdiction.
I mean,
Someone said the city of Mancos. I said, well,
no. It's sad because there's a lot of, you know, it would be nice for small weddings and things, but, you know, still, again, they're going to have to go back and revamp their business plan, you know, and say, okay, no more than 60 people, and you know, and then they're going to have to have better traffic controls and better noise controls, you know, shut it off at, you know, 10 o'clock, because people that live in the country don't stay up late because they get up early, and so there was just a lot of that needed. I think there was not enough communication with neighbors. And I see that more and more and more and more in the county. They publish and they post the signs, and they're supposed to go out and talk to the neighbors, and the neighbors, but it's only the connecting neighbors. So if your property doesn't connect to that, you don't get the packet, but it still affects you 5 miles down the road when these people are hearing this loud music and being affected by the traffic in and out. They really didn't. They were able to come, and if they knew about the meeting, to come and speak their disapproval. So, and they did tell us at the county commissioners meeting, well, our meeting the other day, that Ironwood out on the Dolores Highway is working on dumping out their, you know, emptying their wood pile that they had out there. They're not going to get it done by February 1st because of all this heavy snow, but so they'll probably give them an extension on that. Copenhagen talked to us about that, but they are working on it, so hopefully that will be resolved in the spring. Okay, moving right along is our discussion and action items. We've got the Parks and Trails Master Plan. Heather?
So Walker is here from DHM, and he's going to give us a presentation. I did include the entire draft in your packet for you all to review. Just, you know, just saying.
We appreciate it.
So what kind of the idea is Walker's going to do a presentation for you. He's not every single page of this, but when you received your packet on Friday, if after reviewing it and after Walker's presentation, there are no serious concerns, we're asking you to adopt it. If there are some, you know, tweak this and fix this typo, then adopt it with those conditions. But if there's serious pushback on it, we want to hear that, and then we'll bring it back to the next meeting. So that's kind of the gist of what we're looking for tonight from you all. And I do want to, before we start, say that Jamie and Jerry have actually kind of headed up this project, and they've done a really, really good job. So they've been working hard on this with Walker for months and months and months. So.
And it's still a plan.
It's a plan. We do need to adopt this in order to move forward with funding requests and that kind of thing for updates to the park. And it's a long-term plan. It's not a short-term plan, just so you know. But it's kind of like a strategic plan or something. But it is a long-term plan. So I'm sure to go to Walker for now.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. I'm Walker Christensen from DHM Design. We're a landscape architecture and planning firm out of Durango. And we worked on the original Trails Master Plan from years ago, 10 plus years ago, whatever it was, 13 years ago. And that a lot of the trails that we prioritized in that plan have moved forward, and I've become part of the community, and some are underway, and so I think that was pretty successful. And so we want to do the same thing with the parks, and really just our job was to kind of organize the community's input and help prioritize that as well. And so you can go ahead and go to the next one. But I really want to just do a quick summary of the overall report. As you saw, it was about 60 pages or so. But we have the background info. We did an inventory of all the parks, and then we did our public process, and I'll take you through that a little bit. But we gathered information over the last year plus, and then we put that in as proposed projects, and then we came back and did another meeting where we prioritized those projects. We had a meeting there was a couple meetings with the school, and so got a lot of input from the students, which I think is awesome. And I think we really wanted to take that input to heart and make sure that's incorporated in the projects that we're proposing. So go ahead. The stakeholder group meetings we had throughout the process, and that included people from the school, Trails Group, Creative District, Chamber, Library, and town staff. The community meetings you started back in the spring of 2022, and then we had another public meeting, school meetings, and then the final presentation is tonight. You can see pictures of some of those. So I wanted to split it up into just overall park recommendations and then trail recommendations. But the number one priority that came out of the process was the improvements to Boyle Park. That was strongly favored, and I'll get into exactly what those improvements are. We'll probably put those into at least 2 phases, but phase 1 of Boyle Park is the top priority. The second priority was phase 1 of the Mancos Sports Park at the airport parcel. And so we started to look at a really big picture of what could be out there in the future, long term, but then also in a smaller space, what could be built, sooner, and what some of the needs and wants of the community were. The third priority is improvements to the skate park, and I'll get into that as well. Fourth priority, people wanted to just make sure that we documented this, and they know that this is a big thing, but the rec center with the pool fell at priority number 4. Improvements to Cottonwood Park, number 5, and improvements to Northside Park were number 6. For the trail recommendations, some of these carried through from the last master plan. The top priority was still connecting Boyle Park to Cottonwood Park along the Mancos River. And we know there's a lot of obstacles and things that will need to go through for that, but overall the community really wanted to make that connection and have a trail along the river eventually. There are pieces of the trail like along the school property, and also proposed along Cottonwood Park. That was priority number 2. So some of the river access improvements that have been proposed by the Conservation District are part of that priority, so moving those forward. And just getting river access and a trail in Cottonwood Park was the second one. The third one is the downtown sidewalk improvements. So on the plan, you'll see some red lines and where T3 is, and those are just making connections, connecting from the east up to Boyle Park, making connection from the skate park down to Grand, making the connection along Grand further west. So filling in some of the gaps in the sidewalk to make everything more accessible, connect some of the trails and walkways that you have, like the Blue Moose Trail, the Mountain Lion Trail, the Red Fox Trail, filling in those gaps. One of the big things that people said was they just wanted parks to be connected with a trail of some sort, and if it was accessible, that's even better. So filling in those sidewalks was a big part of it. The fourth one is looking at kind of a more big picture, and I have an image of this that we can look at further in the presentation, but was creating what we're calling the Mancos incline. So similar to the sky steps that are going between Durango and Fort Lewis College, but it's getting up a steep hill, but keeping the trail going, giving people a place to exercise. So people wanted to do something like that could also connect Northside Park up to the BLM parcel potentially in the future. So making that connection seemed like a logical step. There are, easements that would have to be figured out for that, but these are things that are big picture, and people just wanted to make sure they're in the plan. So you think about it. The paths to Mesa Verde was in the previous plan, and that's been a huge thing that's started to move forward. So, it's great to think big picture like that. The fifth one is safety improvements along County Road J. We know that helps make a loop that a lot of people do. So, improving pedestrian safety along there. And then the last one is creating another connection across the highway. And we know how big of a project that was to get the first one, and that was a huge deal to make that work, but it's been successful. And so having another connection across the highway was desired. We did take some drone shots of the parks as part of our inventory, so we have those if you ever need them for anything. So talking about Boyle Park being the top priority, and the first phase of that is looking at the first thing was looking at making the restrooms year-round restrooms, so open to the public all year, adding ADA walkways to the picnic shelters, to the existing picnic shelters, so everyone can use them. Pickleball courts was a huge one. We got a lot of input on that, and that's something I'm seeing as a trend in all the communities that we work with. And so your community had a very organized group that came and voiced their opinion. And so I'll show you the plan of where we're showing 2 pickleball courts. And then this one was a new one, a sand volleyball court that came from students, and that had a lot of support. There were students that came to the public meetings, not just going to the school to solicit input from them. They actually came to the public meeting. They were very well spoken. I was very impressed by them. So that was one of their top priorities, was sand volleyball court. And then looking at, this is one for maintenance and just sustainability, longevity of the park, is regrading, topsoiling, top dressing, and replacing the irrigation system in Boyle Park. And so you can see the plan of that in our proposed priorities. We have the pickleball in the bottom right corner of the park, and there would be, if we do the sidewalk coming from the east, there'd be more connectivity up to that area. The sand volleyball is just north of that, so between the pickleball and the baseball field. We would want to have a shade structure by the pickleball court, because it's a pretty social game, and a lot of people just hang out and talk to each other and wait for the next court. And so having shade there was also important. We looked at, one of the things we put as a potential improvement was making the baseball field an artificial turf field, to cut down on maintenance and cut down on lawn area. That is one that we put in our future improvements list. So it wasn't in phase 1. So the main things are a couple accessible walkways to the picnic shelters, redoing the lawn areas in the short term, the pickleball and sand volleyball. Longer term, we're looking at, playground equipment only has a certain lifespan, so you got to plan to replace that, and it's not inexpensive to replace. So you got to keep that on your list of priorities. Providing more ADA access to all the different amenities within the park. Develop a succession planting plan. So we have these beautiful old trees, the cottonwoods and elms, and we want to plant smaller trees mixed in there, so the next generation gets to enjoy those large park trees as well. A little bit of lighting at the parking lot, outdoor workout equipment, and then one that splash pad was a big one. That was these are all in the future wants list that we wanted to capture. And then you can flip to the next page. One that was also brought up was using the basketball court as an ice rink in the winter. So there are some systems that are pretty simple that you can just put up in the winter time. This was a future phase, but probably not too outlandish. We even have pictures of where they've used it on basketball courts. So you just put up small dasher boards, you can flood it and create a skating rink, which would be another activity to do in winter, try and keep people outside more, especially kids. This was the second priority, which was the sports complex at the airport property. And so this would be on the far north side. So, we know that the gravel pit will still be in operation for many years, but looking at the parcel that the town owns that is out of the way there, you could fit 2 baseball fields, a small kind of multi-purpose field, and a playground as phase 1 of your sports complex. And then further in the presentation, I'll show you what we propose as the full build out. So just looking at what you could fit within this area when the gravel pit is decommissioned. And so really looking long term, but as the community grows, you may want more areas for tournaments, and it's part of the economic development, quality of life, and providing these amenities for your community so people do stay and want to live here. The skate park is the third priority, and we know that the skaters and the people who use it want a more permanent, concrete, traditional bowl, but we've actually found some really unique companies that are doing more of a combination of skate park and pump track, and they're calling it a wheel park. And so the bottom left image is that. And so you can have scooters out there, you can have bikes, and you can have skateboarders out there. So it adds even more activity to this area. And we know we have a small space, but we tried to look at comparable areas. There's the old skate park, the original skate park in Salida is kind of a similar size, if you can picture that. And then we found another one that we put in the report as an example that was more of that wheel park. The first step in the skate park will be hiring a skate park designer to work with the community and the kids to figure out what they really want and get the design started. We put in rough budget numbers, but they will help you fine tune that. So that's a step where you're not taking it to construction. And even though we've prioritized these, you may get a grant that will just cover the skate park design, and you can get that going. So even though they're prioritized and you're kind of working towards grants and raising the funding for these things, you can also be opportunistic for some of these smaller things that you need. As I said, we put the rec center in there, and this is a large community project. So we looked at rec centers in communities of similar size, and the buildings range from like 5 million to 15 million. So it's a serious long-term project, and you have to acquire the land and figure out how to finance that. but we did want to make sure we captured it because it was a thing that was brought up many times in the community meetings. Cottonwood Park, we have some of the stuff that the Conservation District is already working on, but another thing that people talked about was in phase 1, they want a permanent restroom building, like a 2-unit building, drinking fountain for people and dogs, river access improvements like boulders or steps down so people can actually access the river. And then crusher fine trails established along the river and just making that whole trail network through there, making sure it's sustainable. In future phases, and some of these can happen at any time as well, but it's that same kind of restoration and trying to make it a healthier ecological system. It's right by the river, so it makes sense to be able to bring more habitat into that area, and I think everyone's very supportive of that. So this is the plan showing the restroom up by the existing parking lot, formalizing some of the trails through there, and river access and a river trail. Northside Park, so this on the bottom left is the sky steps that we're talking about, which we're calling the Mancos Incline. But for Northside Park, there's some opportunity to really get people out into a nice riparian habitat area along Chicken Creek there. So maybe a boardwalk, a wildlife overlook, a pedestrian bridge to get people across the creek. And, those are some of the starting points to really be able to enjoy some of the cool natural amenities that you have there, as well as the playground and what's already been built there. So giving the north side of town a nice access there, and then in the future, hopefully even an access further up to the BLM parcel. So these are looking at bigger kind of future opportunities, and the first one is just talking about the airport parcel in general. That's, like I said, really big, long-term, but could be a really amazing amenity for the community. We know certain parts of it wouldn't be touched for a long time, but let's get that in the plan, and so people can think about it, and future boards can look at it and know that the community wanted that. The second one is, scoot up here a little bit. That's a little smaller. So making a new community center next to Mancos Marshal's office and turning the existing community center into retail and mixed use. The third one is a trail to connect to the eastern part of the county and some of the amenities that are over there, like the Cherry Creek Road. Fourth one is connecting Chicken Creek along the old railroad grade, providing that as an amenity. And then the fifth one would be actually getting a trail from town out to the airport parcel. If phase 1 of that is developed, or just long term, because that's such a heavy recreation corridor already. The more you can get people on bikes, walking up there, whatever, just it's kind of an amazing opportunity. And then the sixth one is off the map, but we wanted to mention the state land board parcels, and sometimes those can be incorporated as recreational opportunities for the community. So this is just an aerial view of the airport parcel. We can go to the next one. This shows the full build out of what could be there. So you could have a full fourplex of baseball, softball fields, and then multi-use fields, and what you need and what is wanted throughout the years. If this is a 20-year project, like we didn't know pickleball was going to be this huge, so what's exactly there will probably change, but this is just kind of showing in general what you could fit out there. So there's a number of just smaller multi-purpose fields that could fit. 4 tennis courts. That was something that people said they really wanted. People said they wanted it in Boyle Park, but it didn't quite fit in the space that we have. And so planning for it out in phase 1 or phase 2 of the airport parcel could be a great place for that. You could have a whole pickleball complex out there. And there's parking that kind of weaves through, and we call that kind of our sports boulevard. So it takes you through the park and gets people connected to all the different activities. So it could really be a large, like, active recreation site. Also, it could be a nice passive recreation site. We just looked at the kind of flatter area for sports facilities, but there's also a lot of acreage that could be trails, further develop your trail system. So this is one thing that we incorporated in the future opportunities. There could be a pump track, there could be a mountain bike skills course. So there's plenty of space for elements like that as well. So this is just showing moving the community center, relocating the community center, and the possibility of turning the old one into retail space, and activating another building on Grand. And so that's just showing moving it over to the marshal's office. So that is just kind of a quick nuts and bolts summary of the main things that the community is really interested in incorporating and the priorities. And with that, I'll kind of open it up to you for questions or comments.
One thing that I did notice reviewing this and in discussions with other people was pickleball, like you said, has just gone crazy. But what we've done here is we put the pickleball right where we have our horseshoe pits, and we do horseshoe pits addressed in the park. That's one of those things that I just had to comment where horseshoe pits come from.
We did talk about that, and we know there's certain times a year where they get used more in certain events, and so yeah, we thought that we could relocate them on the eastern side of the park.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm not, because there's plenty of places where they can fit. I'm just saying, don't forget them. I think it's a big picture for you guys for us to figure that out, because I think it will really good.
People use them.
But we also asked Mancos Days, because the only time they're ever used is Mancos Days.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're not having those tournaments anymore.
Yeah, and I do see people using periodically, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So,
But we did talk about relocating them to the other side of the access road there.
Yeah, it'd be perfect.
So they're not necessarily going away altogether.
Right.
We just.
And they're such a small, easy, but I just wanted to say,
And there's not a ton of maintenance to them.
Yeah.
No, we don't have a lot of maintenance. The reason they're not on here though is because we're just gonna relocate them to the other side, so.
Yeah, the other side of the walk. No, that's fine, I just do think that you'll get some backlash if they just go away and don't address it.
you said they aren't having the contest. I just had a meet out with them the other night, and they're having horseshoe.
Oh, I don't know that, we talked about it at one of the public meetings, and
Yeah.
they said, take away, we will get.
At the Mancos Day meeting, it was big, the horseshoe tournament, so I don't know.
Well, regardless, then we'll just relocate.
Yeah, we can add that.
It's not, they're not a major, cost.
They're a good size. We can fit them.
That whole on the east side of that walk where we dump all the snow would be perfect. No, you can't.
Use lighter horseshoes.
Back to
You
more
can step
general,
closer.
a more general question. When I look at the budgets, I mean, there's good budgets about implementation costs, but one thing I'm missing is, increases in staff to manage all this, maintenance costs. It feels like that's a missing piece for me. Of what is it going to cost the town long term to maintain? I mean, like the full build out of the airport property, that's really expensive. That's going to require more staff and more money to keep that going. And how's that going to come out of the budgets? So I'm just, each case, each step of this would be interesting in the budget to kind of understand the impact.
We can add some information in that. We usually do put that in the plans, and it's like per acre, how much staff do you need?
That'd be very
So
helpful.
yeah, we can do that.
Well, I just want to say thank you. I think you really did listen to the community, and I think you really listened to what the students had to say, and it's reflective in this proposal. I know at some point, maybe Heather can help address this too, but I think at one point we talked about retrofitting the restrooms at Boyle Park for year round, and then we said, oh, maybe we're not going to do that or so on. But I'd like to, is that still something that we're?
It is, and
Okay.
it's in here.
Yes, it
It's
is.
in phase 1.
Yes, so I mean, that's one of the top things, and that's always in the budget thing you send us, that you've saved money to do that. And then,
But we need to get grant money for that. So our grant agencies really, really want to see that what we're asking them for is a plan of some kind.
oh, I
So
see.
once this is adopted,
Then you can do that.
then Carrie, we sit down and figure out, because, like Walker was saying, we could work on phase 1
Mhm.
at Royal Park at the same time, and then once the grant is done and construction starts,
Mhm.
then we can start working on, say, a consultant for the skate park. But we need the plan adopted,
Yeah,
because the first thing, if we go to Royal, the first thing they're gonna do is ask us what plans.
yeah,
What's your plan?
yeah,
Where is it as a priority, and did you reach out to the community?
yeah,
So
okay.
that's what they're gonna ask for, all of that.
And all of that is right here. Okay.
And Heather, I have a question on like the second page, and it's got up here, it's got the Board of Trustees. Brent's not on it anymore, Fred's not on it.
Right.
That probably needs to be updated.
This was done.
Yeah, there's some updating that needs to be done throughout.
Well, and they created this way back when.
Yeah.
Right,
We'll
so,
update that.
yeah.
I'm making a little list of things like,
yeah,
we're gonna add O&M, we're gonna, that the horseshoes are we're gonna officially note that the horseshoe pits are being removed.
right.
So I'll make a note to update the board of trustees info as well.
And then stuff like on page 8, and I don't know how you want this information, whether we go through this page by page tonight, or if you just want us to mark up a copy and get it to you, or whatever. But I found things like on page 8, it says in 2022 the town plans to create ADA accessibility. So I think there's things like that, we need to update those.
Yeah, if you have comments like that, just get them to us, and I'll get that incorporated.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, please email it to me sooner rather than later if you can. And we'll
Yeah.
do this, 'cause those are not necessarily
Yeah.
content, they don't necessarily need to come back to you for changes, for example. But we do want to make sure that there's,
It's correct.
more
Yeah.
is better, it's a big old document that we've been working on for a long time, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Walter, you guys are working with the Conservation District, or you just took their recommendations for all their river access and everything that they're thinking about?
Yeah, we've kind of seen what they were working on, and that there's support for that, and so we're just kind of seconding, that
Yeah, what
could
they're
be
doing.
incorporated. Yeah.
And I think they're still working on grants and so on to get
Yeah.
get that part moving forward too. Okay.
Page 20, number 8, it has the full range of user groups. And one of them is herders. And are we wanting sheep trailings to go down our trails? Or what is herders? I don't know.
Well, it would be even if, moving cows to the mountains, they'd go across some of the trails, so maybe they're on the trail.
I think they could probably just maybe remove that or something.
I feel like we could remove it. I also feel like someone may have requested that specifically.
Right?
That was at one of the first public
I
meetings.
mean, that's so specific and so different from anything I've ever seen for a trail use, but I would not use a trail that had been just visited by a cattle drive, or a sheep
Bring your big boots.
Take your sheep for a
little
walk.
flight. I mean, you know, it's, I believe in multi-use trails, but, it's hard enough with horses and dogs, because people just don't clean up after themselves.
Yeah, and we're talking more about the town trails and less about the Forest Service and BLM.
Yeah.
You know, that's a whole different issue.
I made a note to just remove that word.
Yeah, that's fine.
Feels to do to change their.
And we can legally move the community center. I thought it was,
Well, again, this is a long-term plan, and it's been under discussion because it takes up prime real estate.
It does.
For sales and, you know, that kind of thing. And the other piece of that is the deed, the community center was deeded to us. It said, we will operate this community center, or we will provide a community center in another location, so we can't just get rid of it. So what has been discussed, and this may be not so much like a public input, but the chamber, the creative district, the town staff, that kind of thing. What has been discussed is potentially selling that location and using the money to build next to where the pocket park is to the marshal's office. It's been floated. It's not something that we're gonna do tomorrow. But we wanted to put it in here so future staff and future boards, if they want to do that, it just takes your brain.
Yeah.
Say, hey, is this something we want to do?
And I had kind of a similar question, but not necessarily about the deed, but about previous grants and for the community center as well as Boyle Park specifically. Like, we've already gotten grants based on a plan, and now we're changing those elements. And how does that work to where we don't have to return the money?
Well, basically, the items for Boyle Park have been in place long enough. The skate park has been in place long enough.
Okay.
The community center, those grants, with the exception of one, energy efficiency, anything done at the community center predates me. And so that's 15 years ago, 14. So our grant agencies, it has definitely, we've definitely got our money. We've lived up to our contractual obligations. And we're fine.
Okay.
I see almost no problem to Boyle Park because 90% of what we're doing is new. We're putting in new pickleball, we're putting in new sand volleyball. We are upgrading the bathrooms to make them more accessible. We're putting in new, there's going to be no problem. Bilco's extremely competitive. However, if we're denied the grant, it's not going to be because they had already given us money for the project. So we've met and exceeded all of our time contractual obligations for all of these locations.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was a expiration date on requirements and stuff like that. Another question is, how do you prevent a sand volleyball court from becoming a cat box?
We cover it.
You cover it?
We cover it, it's not in this.
Okay.
Most places that have them don't have, we always anticipate that, we put several hotels when I was there. And they're really not a problem with that. It's an occasional scenario, but that could happen anywhere. To cover a volleyball court, what happens is you cover it and someone comes and wants to play and tears it off and doesn't put it back on. So that they become more of a hindrance than a benefit. But historically, through the studies that we looked at, it's a perception, but not a reality, as far as because of the cat box.
Because our sandbox when we were kids was a total cat box, and nobody we knew had a cat. So yeah, I just I worry about that.
And I do, on that one specifically, the students really, really wanted this. I really anticipate working with the school to either keep track of the equipment that they're going to need to rent to use it, or some kind of checkout system or some kind of maintenance. All of this is rather new, so we don't have all of the details of procedures and policies, but I anticipate working with the school on that one. Say, what are you guys gonna, who built it, who's gonna maintain it, kind of thing. And having, maybe they can make a curriculum, or maybe it can be their PE classes or whatever. But haven't nailed down all of those details, but that's definitely not on the table.
Yeah, if it's getting used and those people they'll want to take care of it and they'll do some of the maintenance themselves too, if that's a problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the old days, you could just stick a rake out there and, they'd rake it up before they played. But nowadays, somebody'd steal a rake probably, so.
Put it on a chain.
Yeah, really long chain. 50 foot.
Now I just have another question on the community center. The picture shows moving it to the back of that lot, and I thought that back of that lot was going to be for the marshal's office to use. You said the pocket park, and it's not showing in front where the pocket park is. It's behind the pocket park, and I'm just, we bought that for a reason for the marshal's office to have room for equipment and vehicles that they impound and things like that. So I don't want the community center to interrupt what we've already planned for the marshal's office because they asked for that space. So.
And it won't. Most of this is conceptual. Like
Okay.
Drawings are conceptual, number one. And number two, the marshal's office is going to be built years and years and years before we're going to the community center. So the community center is going, and again, maybe it ends up not working.
Yeah.
Who knows? But the community center is going to have to fit into that space. And the marshal's office will already be built and being used, and it'll be fenced.
Or a new
You know what I
space.
mean?
It doesn't have to stay there.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, you go
just,
somewhere else.
it's more of a concept of, yes, if we do this,
We would like to.
this we want
Yeah.
to move.
But everything in here, like the drawings and stuff, especially, even the ones up at the airport property, because we have plans already in place.
Yeah.
So those are conceptual to say, here's what you can do with that space, but maybe once the fibers built at the shooting range and all that other stuff, this stuff maybe we move. So we already have kind of projects that are underway up there, but this is just to say, this is what you can do, and if you want to do this, this is what it's going to cost you, but maybe you should move the parking lot here.
Okay.
It's all conceptual.
And I don't want to go too conceptual, but it seems like if we were to do all of this and connect, say the airport with the sky steps, and the crossing over 160 becomes an issue in my mind. And I'm wondering if there's, have you thought about that? I mean, if there's more traffic coming and going from south side to north side, maybe a pedestrian bridge over the highway, is that could be the thing there?
Probably won't happen.
Probably not pedestrian bridge, however, we have an access control plan with CDOT, so any, development, first of all, there is another pedestrian crossing in this, at a separate location in this plan. And we have an access control plan with CDOT that when, again, long-term, but when done, there are lights, like there's a light at Monty, so people can cross there. So that rolls into, all of that is taken into consideration when we're making improvements along 160.
Anybody else have any questions?
I do not.
I just have other typo things because I just am built that way. So yeah, I'll email it to you.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wilson, for coming.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Walker.
it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Walker.
it's a
Thank you.
great looking plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Thank you.
Only about 50 million, I think we could do it all.
I'll win that lottery.
Drop it by.
Might get the consultant paid for 50.
Okay, so moving right along, the next one is a resolution 4, series 2023, the fire ban.
Do we need to vote on this?
Oh, do we need to vote on this?
Do you want us to make all these changes and bring it back to you?
No,
No,
I think we ought to adopt it.
I think we need to vote on this.
Okay.
With proposed changes.
And I have made 4 changes, just so you know. Adding some kind of O&M information, relocating the horseshoes, updating the DOT, and then we don't even need to address the typos, that's just.
Okay.
So if you're comfortable, I have the changes, so you can make your motion to include the changes discussed in the meeting.
Okay.
If you want to.
Then I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, if satisfied with the revised parks and master plans with the revisions of the town of Mancos, that we adopt this.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Richard Tucker and a second by trustee Denise Bryant to adopt the revised Parks and Trail Master Plan for the town of Mancos with the suggested improvements. Jamie, would you call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Cindy Simpson,
Aye.
trustee Ed Hallam,
Aye.
trustee Richard Tucker,
Aye.
trustee Manning,
Aye.
trustee Denise Bryant.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries.
Thanks, Walker.
Thanks, Walker.
Thanks, Walker.
What I did there,
Okay, now we'll move along to resolution 4, the fire ban exemption.
So I brought this to the board last year and just bringing it back to the board with the snowfall that we've had. Again, it's about mitigation prior to summer. So if the board has any questions or concerns, I'll answer those, but it's fairly straightforward.
Anybody have any questions?
No.
Still requires people to use purpose-built.
No, not
No?
so much on, no. So there's some places in town that don't have it. And again, this is like the river, around the river where we have more built up, some of the backyards. It's to get the fuel burnt while it's safe. And so if they don't have a purpose built, I'm not so concerned about that. It's let's get the fuel burnt now where it's not going to go anywhere versus when they all want to burn in May and June.
Or July.
Yeah, or July.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm not going to get I'm not going to see what I want to see until maybe 5 years down the road. Like as we continue to get off and on winters, everything else, there's going to be winters that we cannot do this. But we need community participation to stop fire from coming through town.
I do have a question. I thought at one time we talked about us following what the county was doing.
I'm still working on that. I'm not quite. That's a lot
That's
of
what we
work
do.
for me to get
Get
that in
So
there.
that hasn't, that's not a real thing
No, it's up here. No, I'm working on that as I get time.
Okay.
In between other things I'm working on, that's just a conceptual
yet. Okay.
thing that it will come to the board this year. It's just I want to make sure when I bring it to you, it's pretty sound.
Thank you.
Any comments? Yeah,
Did you get no?
I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve resolution 4, series 2023, a resolution temporarily lifting the ban on open fires within the town of Mancos limits to and through March 31st, 2023.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Ed Hallam and a second by trustee Nick Manning to approve resolution 4, series 2023, a resolution temporarily lifting the ban on open fires within town of Mancos limits to and through March 31st, 2023. Jamie, would you call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Cindy Simpson,
Aye.
trustee Ed Hallam,
Aye.
trustee Richard Tucker,
Aye.
trustee Nick Manning,
Aye.
trustee Denise Bryant.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Justin.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Justin.
Justin.
Okay, the next thing is the 2022 final work plan and financial update unaudited. Heather.
Nothing really to add other than to kind of emphasize that these are unaudited financials. So when our auditor comes, what we do, he prefers, we've had other auditors, but what this auditor prefers is that when we're cutting checks in January for December expenses, that we do not look them up. We just cut them in January, we put them in a folder, and Lex to come in and go through them. So that's why I emphasize unaudited. Because, for example, today, our credit card statements, all of those are for December. He's gonna look at during the audit. But he's amazing and does that for us. So some of these will change. But he will be here another day or two to conduct the audit, and then he'll present it to you like last year. That's the only thing I wanted to emphasize was the timeline. Anything else, if you guys have any questions or anything, answer here.
I don't really have a question, it's just a comment, but I'm glad the conservation, Mancos, you added a little bit what they've been up to, that was really helpful.
Well, we share an intern with them.
Right.
To the tune of $30,000 a year, so they do actual reports every time we do a report. And actually, Sensa reaches out to me, she's down with it, she's like, hey, I know this is one of your reports, and here you go. And if you ever want her to be here, she's absolutely offered that as well. They're amazing. So it's a really good partnership.
Well, I like that. Thank you.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Okay, moving right along then, we have the items for February 8th. We've got the event discussion workshop.
We're going to try, we've kind of talked about, there are some larger events and more events, and not town events, events in town. So we're going to get together and try to figure out potentially a checklist or some procedures, or if they want a street closure, put it all together in one. Because as the town grows and as we get on the radar, we're seeing more and more of that. So department heads are going to get together. I don't want it to trump your financial policies workshop, but I do put it on here mostly so that you would know and then we would know what's coming to a future workshop.
I also see where the school board is meeting with all of the different, or they're like tomorrow night at the Mancos Public Library. I was approached, they want to come again and meet with.
We're working with them and scheduled for February 22nd. The agenda's been drafted, and you guys will see that.
Okay, all right.
On the next agenda, when we talk about items for the 22nd agenda, you'll
Okay.
see the joint workshop.
All right. I just knew that they were coming around. Okay, then we have the Town of Mancos Financial Policies Workshop, the January bills and claims, and appoint a trustee to fill the vacancy.
And one more item, at that same, after you appoint the trustee, you will need to appoint a P&Z liaison, because Betsy was one of the liaisons to P&Z. So, you'll need to appoint a P&Z liaison at that same meeting, but you need to appoint the trustee first. So, be thinking about who wants to sit on the P&Z board.
The new trustee?
That's so.
And so,
Wait a minute, I think we just had a volunteer here.
So at the next meeting, or at the February 8th meeting, then Nick, if you're really interested, say that, and then they vote you in.
okay,
How often do they meet? 3 times a month?
once
They
a month.
meet once, so
Once.
your second, third, and fourth Wednesdays will be voted. Because you meet here the second and fourth, and P&Z meets the third.
And the vacancies has closed, or are we still taking applications?
Yeah, she's still taking.
Okay, up until
So
when?
do they just come to town hall and pick up an application,
They
or?
can pick one up. Jason created a neat little, what is it
QR
called?
code.
QR code.
Yes.
They can go to the post office and put their QR code and fill it out.
Yep.
And
Where's the QR code at?
It's on the paper. We posted around.
Yeah,
Oh, it's around town, it's different places. Jason, this technology, all right. Okay, so do that or come to town hall and get it.
And it's on our website and everything. You can print it off of there.
Okay,
And it's open until when?
The meeting.
Next
Friday, because I
That's
didn't
right.
work on that.
so it's a week from this Friday? Okay.
Friday, February 4th. Okay,
I
9
don't
days,
remember honestly, I think it's
Yeah.
February 4th.
9 days.
okay. All right.
That's a Jamie thing as the clerk for you all. So, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
She's handling it.
You don't know.
Okay, so does anybody else have anything they want to add? Okay, all right, then next thing will be adjournment.